welcome everyone, and I just want to let you know that you are joining an amazing series on safety and from your HAR team and the Risk Management Property Management Subcommittee. So I wanted to remind you, I am Paula Cleveland with Keystone Signature Properties, and I'm also your chair this year for your Risk Management Subcommittee. And I have with us also on this webinar, Mr. J. Mac Sanders, which is our committee co-chair, and also the NARPM, which is the National Association of Residential Property Management Association, our Houston chapter. I'm also the president for 2021, and JMAC is our president-elect. So I'm going to turn over to JMAC just a minute and let him tell you all about HAR. I'm sorry, not HAR. You know all about HAR, about NARPM. And but before I do that, I want to just let you know that today our focus is safety and best practices for property management. And we have a really power-packed hour and a half, and so get excited. J-Mac, tell us about NARPM. Can you hear me, J-Mac?
He's frozen.
Frozen in time.
Oh no.
Well, when J-Mac jumps in, he may give us a bad dad joke we don't really want to hear. So while he's unfreezing, which he does a lot, as he's unfreezing, I just want you to know that today's webinar, you're going to be learning how to work in a virtual manner, coordinating self-showings to reduce crime, scams, and damage, conduct safe evictions, watch for and prevent scams and frauds, learn about safe work practices, utilize all things technology, safe programs, apps, and more, how to use how to use your smartphone as a weapon to be safe. How about that? And also our presenter has tools, and more tools. I think what she's already told me is she's got so much information, we're never going to get it all in, but she's going to shove it in as best she can. J-Mac, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can now. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just again want to say thank you to everybody for being here for this webinar. If you're not super familiar with NARPM, it's the industry jargon for what Paula mentioned earlier, the National Association of Residential Property Managers. I want to tell you a little bit more about the Houston chapter and the benefits to joining the Houston chapter and getting to know other property managers in the region, in the area that are engaged and involved. It's kind of like when you're on an HAR committee, you get to meet other people that are in that committee that are engaged in the business. They do it full time, and they're interested in wanting to learn from each other best practices across the board on whatever those may be, whether it's multiple offers right now or how to navigate the lending network. Well, we have that exact same thing for the property management subcommittee with risk management, but specifically with the entire organization of NARPM. We have networking groups. We try and meet monthly, whether it's via Zoom. We're hoping to get back in person pretty soon here, but where we talk about the issues of the day, and whether it's talking to having a panel of constables to justices of the peace to be able to share what best practices are in their courts if you have to be in front of them. There's also education that NARPM provides that is property management specific, whether it's investing or it's going how to evaluate a property, all those different things, as well as we provide guidance on engaging with owners and maintenance and all the different facets. Clearly, we all have to deal with maintenance, especially right now with what happened with the snow a couple weeks ago and the catastrophe that it was for our region. So I know I've been able to reach out to many people in this group and to talk to them about all the different things that are going on in my property management practice. And at the end of the day, it's another invaluable way to reconnect with other like-minded professionals. So the website is NARPM Houston, NARPM Houston.com is the website to go to, and I'll put this in the chat, those particular links. And then the email for us is NARPM, N-A-R-P-M, Houston, one word, narpmhouston@gmail.com. So thank you so much for being here. Looking forward to Tracy giving us the lowdown on, using your cell phone if you have to. I'm excited about that one for safety. So anyways, back to you, Paula.
Thank you so much, JMac. So in a world of distractions, each of us is faced with making moment-to-moment decisions that affect our personal lives, our clients, our family, and even more of the big picture is our industry and our communities. I don't think we think of it that way, but it's really true. It's getting harder and harder to be single-minded and focused on what is right before us, but it's vital for our safety. We have to be aware of our surroundings and for the safety of others. So for right now, if you'll just please make sure that you're on mute so that our presenter can get ready. And then if you've got any questions or things that you want to mention or discuss or be a part of the group, I think our group is a good size. We have the opportunity to do that. If you'll place your questions in the chat, we'll start answering them as we go throughout the process. So without further ado, we're so excited to bring you Tracy, the safety lady, Hawkins. She is a former real estate agent. She's a safety expert, and she's a professional speaker and trainer and has been so for over 26 years. She is the safety expert for Inman and a writer for the National Association of Realtors, NARPM, National Association of Residential Property Managers, and The Close. She hosts a Facebook group called the Safety and Security Source for Real Estate, and she is dedicated to bringing all of us to new heights of awareness. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for having us today, and we're welcoming you.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to say, first of all, that I am so impressed with the Houston Association of Realtors Education Committee, including Teresa and Paula and JMac, to get to know you all in this process. People think we just show up today and start talking. There was planning involved. So you all took it seriously and you were all engaged. So I really appreciate you all. So everyone on here needs to remember to give your committee a virtual high five. So let's talk. She pretty much told you who I am. I am a former agent and I've been a property manager and investor, a landlord, all of those good things. I decided that that wasn't the world for me. I am passionate about safety. So I am here and I get to travel across the country in real life in the olden days and nowadays virtually. Looks like I'll be able to get on the road again this year. So I'm looking forward to that. But what we're going to do today is talk about some action techniques, tools, and tips to help you do your jobs in a safe manner. As Paula mentioned, if you have any questions, I need to hear from you. Go ahead and write it in the chat. And if you're comfortable unclicking that mic, just go ahead and speak up. Whichever way you're most comfortable, Paula will let me know if there are any questions in the chat. So the question is, why am I here? That's the first question of the day. The National Association of Realtors has mandated that all associations and boards must have some kind of safety education. What I'm appreciative of is that HAR decided that it didn't want just any safety education. They wanted a true subject matter expert. That would be me. So I really appreciate that. We're going to have 4 classes this year. This is one of the first. We're going to have one each quarter, different themes. So definitely pay attention and come back again. This is the Facebook group that Paula mentioned. I'll talk about that at the end. But if you join that group, you will be able to see all of the stories about crimes against agents. And there's more than you'll ever know. Not only that, but you'll get tips, we'll get lessons learned, as well as articles that I've written. Everything and anything real estate safety you can find in that group. I want to say about 6, 7, 8 years ago, I had an aha moment. I had an education director say, Tracy, safety is important. She said, but I can't hire you. Unless you teach real estate agents how to make more money, they're not going to show up for training. So I had to put on my thinking cap. It's like, how do I make that happen? How do I make safety profitable? And how do I entice them to show up? I created the country's only real estate safety designation, and I've had over 600 agents complete it. And these classes, I do believe, are going to be part of the classes that I will teach for HAR this year. I teach real estate agents not only how to work safely, but how to make more money doing so. So definitely stay tuned for that. I talk to brokers, managers, and owners about making sure their office offices are safe. After a real estate agent's family sued her company for negligence because they did not provide safety training, I put on my thinking cap again, and I created a broker owner manager safety certification workshop where I teach them how to not get sued successfully. So we talked about everything from the physical office space, the equipment inside, the people, including the agents, practices, and a handbook. And that's also going to be one of our classes this year. So stay tuned for that. The article that I wrote for NORPM would have been about a year ago, right near the beginning of the pandemic. And I wanted to talk about safety, and the article goes in depth. So you can certainly find, I think it was the May version of the article. And we talk all things safety, and we're going to cover some of the things that we talk about today. So that is a great resource. He also got the opportunity to write an article for the recent edition of Houston Realtor magazine. And that article, again, in depth, talking about property management safety. And one thing that I found that there's not a lot of people talking about it. So these are two great resources for you. Okay, let's talk about the risk of the job. Now, here's our first question of the day. Get ready, Paula. So I'm going to ask you all, what is one of the risks involved in doing the jobs that you do? What is a danger or a risk involved in the property management safety job? You can either unmute the microphone, or you can write it in the chat section. Oh, I don't put my screen. Let me know when you see something, please.
Will do. Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. And this is interactive, guys, so we will be here until you answer. I don't know why my screen isn't disappearing. The little slides on the side.
Repeat the question, Tracy.
Okay, name a risk involved in the job that you do. What is a risk involved in being a property manager?
Showing with people I don't know.
Excellent. Give me one more.
This is it's a webinar style, so you'll have to put it in the chat. Even though it's interactive, you'll still have to put it in the chat. Another person said working alone and evictions.
Ah, excellent, excellent. Okay. Hey,
checking on abandoned property, showing all hours of the day. So people show in the dark sometimes because the day ends, but the time's still slotted that's available.
Okay.
Evictions with the disgruntled tenants.
Okay, wonderful. Now, hey, real quick question. Can you all see the slides down the left side of my screen, or just the one slide that we're talking about?
Yes, I can see them. I think you're going to have to go to view and actually, or go to slideshow. Sorry, go to slideshow.
Right, I've done that, and they're not going away. So I don't know what's happening here. That's distracting me. It's not going away. So I don't know what's happening.
Teresa?
My guess is you have it in presentation mode. And so if you have a second screen, it's showing up on the second screen. No?
This is normal. Oh, well, I don't want to delay. So, oops, wait, there we are. There we are. Okay. Whew. Technology, you love it, but sometimes it doesn't cooperate. Okay, thank you all for chiming in with those answers. Let's look at your job description. You make a living meeting complete strangers in empty houses. And then for those of you who are agents, and sometimes in the property management business, you make a living sitting or waiting in those empty houses for strangers to walk in. How does that sound? Not safe at all. So what I wanted to do is help you remove some of those risks. So the question is, who has heard that the U.S. Department of Labor considers real estate sales and leasing a high-risk hazardous occupation? Just in the chat box, type yes or no. They consider this job right up there with convenience store clerks, law enforcement officials, security guards, Uber, taxi drivers. So your job is considered high risk. And looking at the job description, it's easy to see how. Again, my job is not to scare you today, but to give you the tools to remove some of that risk from some of those risks from your jobs. Okay, I see a raised hand. Is there a question? Let Tanya write the question in the chat. And Tanya, if you will just write the question, if you have a question or comment, just write it in the chat, and then Paula will let me know when we get to it. I'm going to assume that many of you all are familiar with the Beverly Carter story. Beverly Carter was a real estate agent back in, I want to say 2013, 2014, who got a phone call to meet a client at a property. She didn't know the client. Now, she did have a second thought after she set up the appointment. And I know that because I had an opportunity to interview her office mate. So she's thinking, I'm about to meet this guy who I don't know. I've got a bad feeling about it. So at that point, she called him back and she said, look, I am not comfortable meeting with you alone. And he said, oh, don't worry, my wife will be there. As a matter of fact, she's right here now. And we now know, of course, it was his accomplice. So Beverly talked to the wife and she felt comfortable. When she got to the property, it was only him. And he said, don't worry, my wife is working today. Let's do a FaceTime. So do a FaceTime and we'll walk through the property with her. And, she can see what we're looking at. And I understand that those are the last images on her phone. The point is, something told her that something was wrong. And after Beverly Carter passed away, after she was murdered, her family sued the company for negligence. So the question is, how can other companies prevent lawsuits like that? And that's to actually reduce your risk, get the training, learn how to reduce your risk so that if you are sued, at least you know that you've done every single thing in your power to prevent that. I believe in lessons learned. I want to talk to you all about some crimes against real estate agents. A lot of times when I talk to agents, they think nothing's happened since the Beverly Carter story. But I'm here to tell you there's stuff that happens on a regular basis. Some of it you will never know about. Some of it I know too much about. I can't sleep at night sometimes, but I need to know. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the crimes against real estate agents, the most recent ones. We're going to talk about lessons learned. Now, keep in mind, the goal is never, ever to blame the victim, but instead to simply learn what could have been done differently. This is the most recent crime, the most recent property manager / agent. He was actually going to a property to hand off keys or paperwork to a tenant. And then when he came outside, there was a 15-year-old waiting who basically kidnapped him at gunpoint, forced him to drive to 2 ATM machines to get $500 out at each one. And then he shot him in the car while he was still driving. So that was the most recent case. Now it's said that the 15-year-old may have some mental illness issues. We don't know that for sure, but it just shows the dangers. He was outside of his home base and he was working with a client. The one before that occurred on December 28th. This one was in Omaha. Now, again, another real estate agent who was meeting a tenant at a property that they were renting out. So he was working in property management capability there. And he was there again to hand off a key to the client. They killed him and stuffed his body in the crawl space of the house. So these are the two most recent crimes against real estate agents / who happen to be property managers. And you all know the story about the real estate agent who was missing. We still don't know all details if it was related to real estate or not, but that certainly woke up the community and everyone started talking about safety again. That was at the end of last year. Here in the Kansas City area and the suburbs in Blue Springs, there was a tenant who was about to get evicted. So the process server went to evict them and the process server happened to be armed. The tenant was armed too. So the tenant pulled his gun on the process server. The process server shot him, did not kill him. But the atmosphere is such that the big news was that, hey, someone went to serve an eviction and they shot the tenant. That's my sister, my twin sister, Stacy. And we're going to touch upon this. Stacy is she calls herself a housing provider, landlord. She owns a lot of property. And if you will notice in the story, the whole tenant movement, the cancel rent, no evictions, cancel evictions, that movement is very strong here in the Kansas City area. And it's strong to the point where it's become dangerous. So the headline after the process server shot the tenant who was armed is that the deputy shot a tenant. No one mentioned that he was armed. And you'll see that's our courthouse here in Kansas City. The tenant movement, they're barricading the courthouse. They do that on a regular basis to stop evictions. They're at the point now where they are targeting judges. So judges are in danger, 100 strong, showing up on the judge's porch, his front porch, to protest the eviction docket. A lawyer here in town who processes legal evictions is getting targeted. They're doing negative reviews. My sister is like the forefront. She's at the forefront. She started a group, National Housing Alliance, something along those lines, where she's giving landlords and property owners a voice, because all we hear are the stories about tenants getting evicted. No one's talking about the property owners, the housing providers, the landlords who aren't collecting rent, who can't make it. So she is also could be in danger. So I worry about her. So I'm telling you all, and I understand that the movement is not so strong there in Houston, but what my sister says is if it's not in your city yet, it's coming. So that's an issue definitely in the news. You all saw the story in Seattle last year where a property manager and a service manager went to evict a woman in I guess, a high rise. She stabbed and killed the service manager, or stabbed the property manager, did not kill them. There's a story in Virginia about an agent who was attacked with a wrench. She is surviving back in Ohio. And there's so many stories. I don't want to spend too much time, but the goal is to let you know that this is real. This is happening. A real estate agent standing in a front yard who had a car pull up with these two fellas in. They asked for a business card. She reached to hand it to him. They tried to pull her in the car and kidnap her. She was able to get away. The recent agent before the two guys that I talked about who was murdered on the job New Year's Eve, Monique Bow, that's in Minnesota. Exact same situation as Beverly Carter. She got a phone call from a client she didn't know, went to meet them at a property. They ended up kidnapping her and killing her. You all may remember David Stocco, again, a property manager who was killed while he was trying to evict tenants. And that was, I want to say, January of 2019. So the stories are out there. And my job is to make sure you all remember to have the actual tools and tips to solve them. This was the situation there in Houston, and there are a lot of phone calls. So again, and people saw the video in California when the agent was assaulted right there on the porch camera. I wrote an article for Realtor Magazine that talked about the 6 things that that agent did right. So that's something worth taking a look at, and I will give you the parameters to search for the articles that I talk about. But she did 6 things right to survive that crime, and that's something good to look at. Here's the next question. I want to know what a criminal looks like. Here's the question. Who do you fear? I need an adjective only, a physical description of someone that you fear, someone that you do not want to see meeting you at a property, someone you don't want to see get out of the car, someone you do not want to see walk into your office to go look at a property based solely on physical appearance. So I need in the chat box you to put some adjectives. And so often everyone hesitates. I'm saying political correctness aside, give me physical descriptions of who you are afraid of. And Paula, let me know when you see them.
Okay, so start adding them to the chat. Mine would be somebody who looks disgruntled, who's just got the demeanor of a disgruntled attitude.
Excellent, excellent. Let's hear 2 more. Physical description of someone you don't want to see, who you're afraid of, someone who you would walk across the street to avoid. And everyone has it.
Walking billboards, like a lot of tattoos.
Okay, give me one more.
Someone who is looking around kind of shady-like.
Okay, excellent. And I'm sure there'll be more in the chat. That's fine. But my job today is to tell you to not judge a book by its cover. Judging a book by its cover when it comes to trying to determine who could mean you harm could get you hurt. It could cost you business. You cannot judge a book by its cover. If you were judging this book by its cover, and if you know who this is, type it in the chat. If you were, let's say, you had a high-end upscale property, and then this fella pulled up in that pickup truck, and he pulled up and said, I want to look at it. If you judge this book by its cover, it could cost you. Anyone know who that is?
My grandpa? Just kidding.
It could be anybody's grandpa. He reminds me of mine. Anyone know who it is? That is Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. And if you think that he couldn't buy the entire building or the block, then you would be wrong. So judging this book by its cover could cost you business. Next question, who knows who this fella is? And thinking again, if you judge a book by its cover, let's see what this one would cost you. Anyone know who this is? Type it in the chat.
I hear a Ted Bundy.
Bingo. Everybody always knows him. They don't always know Sam Walton, but they know him. That's Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was a notorious serial killer. When people describe him, they always say he was a clean, good, clean cut, good looking, charming fellow. So if you judge this book by its cover, it could cost you your life. So I'm saying physical description is not a barometer of who means you harm. So you're thinking, what are we supposed to use? Every single animal in nature is born with a survival mechanism that is hardly ever wrong. Every animal possesses it. Who knows what it is? Type it in the chat. Tell me what the survival mechanism that we already have that could keep us from ever being victimized. Tell me what it is.
Someone said instinct,
Okay,
gut instinct, flight or fight, gut.
excellent.
Be
Excellent.
aware, be aware of, I'm going to guess, your surroundings.
Excellent, excellent. Intuition, instinct, sixth sense, fight or flight. Some people say spidey sense, your gut, whatever you want to call it, it is hardly ever wrong. If we listen to our guts, then we could avoid so many crimes. As a matter of fact, we can avoid most of the crimes against us. Every single animal in nature has this built-in survival mechanism. Human beings are the only ones who choose to ignore it. And we ignore it for a number of reasons. One is because the number one reason is we don't want to offend someone. We don't want to make them think that we're suspicious of them. If your body is telling you something's wrong, if you get that funny feeling in the pit of your stomach, if the hairs are standing up on your arms, the back of your neck, your body is warning you that you are in danger. Get out of the situation. A real quick story about real estate agents that I work with, two veteran agents, and one was expecting a client to come to the office for the first time. He was a doctor, and she was going to show him properties, really upscale properties. So she was excited about this potential big deal. So she told the agent at the front desk, she said, let me know when my client gets here. So the agent at the front desk sees a guy come in with his lab coat on. She went back, she said, your client's here? She said, but I've got a bad feeling about him. How well do you know him? And she said, I don't know him well at all. She said, can you postpone this showing, get some information on him, check him out a little bit more. The other agent said, that's silly. She went to go show the doctor properties that afternoon. Later on that evening, he called and she said, wait a minute, this conversation isn't making sense. He said, what are you talking about? She's saying, you're talking as if we never met. He said, now you're not making sense. What are you talking about? She said, I showed you property today. You had on your lab coat and everything, your name tag. He said, 2 weeks ago, someone broke into my office and stole my lab coat. It wasn't me. So the question was to the other agent, she said, what did you see that I missed? And the other agent said, at the time, I couldn't tell anything. All I know is that my gut was telling me this was dangerous. She said, but after you left and I had time to think about it, she said he had on his lab coat. How many of you all have ever seen a doctor with his lab coat on pushing a cart in the grocery store? What about at the gas pump? Pumping gas with a lab coat on? Doesn't happen. And then she said, he put his hand on the counter and his fingernails were absolutely filthy. How many of you all have seen a doctor with filthy fingernails? Doesn't really happen. So her gut told her this is a dangerous situation and her brain couldn't process it yet. So what I'm telling you all is don't try to use logic. Don't try to use reason to figure out what's going on. Listen to your guts. If it feels wrong, get out of there. If you have to apologize or explain later on, so it goes, but you need to trust the built-in survival mechanism that we're all born with. Now, this was a representative of Real Safe Agent. He's a criminal expert. And what he said is crimes against real estate agents are predatory. They're not crimes of opportunity. And that statement was so profound that it took me a while to sit there and to think about it. So if you think about a crime against a real estate agent, if we think about the lessons learned from the crimes that we've seen, that the criminal has to actually hunt the agent. Think about the stories that we know about. They have to find them to target them. Then they have to decide, how do I get to meet this person? Then they have to take the act of setting up a meeting. And then they have to actually go to the property to plan out the crime. Now there are, and that's a majority of the cases, the crimes against real estate agents. So criminals are giving it a lot of thought, which means you need to be thinking as much on this side. So then one rare exception to the rule that I would say would be the agent in Florida. He was a real estate agent or a property manager going to hand off keys to a tenant. When he was leaving, he was in the front yard, front of the listing, and this 15-year-old, I doubt, knew it was a real estate agent. All the 15-year-old saw was an easy victim. Here's a guy standing here in a neighborhood that he's not familiar with, and that is what started that crime. So in that situation, maybe it was a crime of opportunity, but also keep in mind that it was still a crime against the real estate agent, because if not for real estate, he wouldn't have been there. So knowing that crimes against real estate agents are predatory, that will hopefully change the way you look at your safety. And that's going to definitely change the way I teach you to look at your safety and how to implement safe acts when you're working. So let's talk about safe screening. I don't know if you all remember in the olden days that they used to tell agents to have them meet in the leasing office. And one of the reasons that was done is to increase witness potential. One thing that I've always said to real estate agents through the years is do what leasing agents do, what property managers do. Make them meet you in advance in the office before you go look at any properties. So you're increasing witness potential, and then you're also letting them know that safety is important to me. It's important to us. Have them show their ID, and as a matter of fact, leave the ID until we come back. So that's why you don't hear as many crimes against leasing agents and property in multifamily complexes as you do in single residential properties, whether in real estate sales or property management and leasing. So what I want to do right now is to have Paula speak up. Now, you all know Paula. If not, she's introduced herself. The article that I wrote for Houston Realtor magazine, Paula is one of the property managers that I interviewed. So make sure you go back and look at the article if you haven't already read it. And then Paula is going to talk about the tips that she shared with me. So Paula.
Thank you, Tracy. So listen, look for red flags and warning signs from tenants during the initial interview. Well, as property managers, we all know that that world is drastically different than it used to be. So what's really changed here? I think I need to spend a few minutes on that. We personally have a company policy, and I know that NARPM and Mike Meenden and some of the main leaders and experienced property managers that have been doing this for a long time, even though we've seen an evolution in ownership by investors who have like large, huge quantities of properties and they're doing these self shows, you have to get a permission from the owner to allow self shows. But for the most part, as a property management company, you really should have a company policy about that. First of all, we don't allow that. I'm just going to tell you what we don't do. And the reason is because look at the eviction process that we have. Very difficult to get somebody else. You can have people who go in, self-show the property, never leave, cause crimes for other people. So that's one thing I'm going to say from a safety perspective, we just do not embrace. But when it comes to red flags and warning signs from tenants applying and interviewing for application on a property, we have a very specific platform in place, and that is we have an online screening process. And the reason why we do that is, number one, it's very systematic. We have a two-step process, which if you don't have a complete application, you haven't paid for the screening process, and you don't have all your information uploaded, which includes an identification that is, legal, like your driver's license or some sort of passport. Now, we're not ID experts, right? So there definitely are opportunities for people to cause fraud. It's a copy, it's a printout. That's also why we don't do screening as property management companies. We send that to the experts in hopes that they catch red flags along the way. So those are really, really impactful things from the very beginning. The other thing that's really important and you're required to do is have criteria that relates to an applicant's needs for that property or what the landlord requires to place a tenant in that property. Rental income is one. And we are held to some high regard of making sure that the application that's submitted, if you've got a yes, no in your application that says, do you have a criminal history? We have to be careful with that, but we also have a responsibility to look deeper if it's something that could cause a safety issue for the community or the property itself.
Excellent.
Thank you. Potential tenants must have submitted their IDs. I think I just kind of really talked about that, but without that, you don't know who your tenants are. We recently, I'll tell a little story, and recent, like as in this month, we had a tenant that was placed a few months ago, back before the end of the year. was a high-rise condominium down in Houston. That tenant continued to submit documentation to prove he was who he was. His credit was really good. His credentials were good. He got placed in the property. And then we recently found out that according to the HOA board that runs that condominium, that person stole the ID of someone else who had the good credit. And so we went back through our procedure. We literally went in and looked at what we did, and did we follow what we say we do? We did. And then did we owe some sort of anything to that person who lost their identity? No, we didn't. An ID, according to some statistics, is stolen every 3 seconds. So there's so many levels to screening, and definitely clear identification is one of them. Time sensitive showings at the end of the day. All right. We all know we're running hard. Property management is not for the faint of heart. There's so many tasks, and one of the things we tend to do as we book things, we move, we're just hitting the pavement. You could have multiple showings set up, and as your day wears getting closer and closer, you know personally that you get weary and you get tired. And if you've got 6 or 8 or 10 properties to show on the property management side, if you're doing that, or if you're an agent and you're out there doing that, by the time you're at the 3rd or 4th property, you're kind of running on subconscious behavior. You're locking doors, you're turning off lights, you're still talking to your people. And at what point does it become a safety issue? Maybe not the very first house that you've shown, but it could linger into the process. So I love the gut feeling thing. I also love that if you know you've got 6 properties to show and it's 4 o'clock because it's supposedly the end of their work day, you have to be careful. You might be out there at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, which changes the potential of danger. So that's one of the things we talk about a lot. Just on the safety side, just being aware of your surroundings, know what's coming, and pay attention to timing. It could really change things for you. And then this one just continues to move into that same light. If you set your own appointments, get yourself all scheduled up, and you're a one-man agent, and most people are, we're running our schedule. Yes, we fit within a big brokerage, and we all have responsibilities, and we owe accountabilities to our broker, or to the manager, or to the process itself. But the truth is, you're out there and you're feeling like you have to do your checklist. While you're doing all that, who knows where you are is very, very important. Did you tell someone where you're going to be for the next 3 hours? Did you tell your spouse? Did you tell your company? Do you have a brokerage policy that someone needs to know, where you're going and what you're showing? That is a big deal, because we've just already heard so many other stories about people that went missing or passed away, were taken advantage of because we just didn't know where they were. Is it the answer? Is it not going to happen because of that? I don't know. But the bottom line is, if you've got an accountability partner, whether that's another agent or your manager or the company staff or whatever, you at least have an advantage. And I think that's really important. And then how to walk through a property and how to leave a property. Don't be the first one in, be the last one in. And if you've got any weird feelings, we've got agents on this call that have gone in and there's been squatters in there. Or you've got naked people, or you've got challenges, or people are scattering out the back door. You've got drug issues. You've got somebody who's broken in, and you can tell that there's a problem with the property. Don't go in. Yes, it's going to put a major wrench in finding that property and this person's day, but better safe than sorry.
Excellent. Well, look at you. Thank you. I can leave now. Thank you. I'm just joking. Now, J-Mac, do you have anything to add? Can you think of any safety concerns that you have encountered or talked to any of your property managers about? You're muted.
Yes, absolutely. I've walked in on properties where everything's fine, and around the corner and somebody is gathering their items and taking off out the back door. They've been squatting in the house. And the house backed up to a fairly large nature preserve. So there's no way to know where they were going, where they came from, how long they'd been there. The property's electricity had not been on, but there was one random light on. So I don't know if they've done something that way. I've had tenants come out before with guns over their shoulders.
Wow.
And
Uh-oh, JMac is frozen.
While JMac is unfreezing, somebody posted, Tisha said that their company uses Life's app. I'm not sure which app that is, but there's an app for maybe saying where you are.
Right, we're going to talk about apps too, but she said, I wonder if she said meant like 360 perhaps, but okay. Any other comments in the chat while we wait for JMac?
Not yet.
Okay, JMac, are you back with us? Oh no, he's freezing today. Okay, well, when he gets back, we'll hear from him. Let us move on. And you just said this, Paula, make your whereabouts known. There should never, ever be a time that you are working where someone doesn't know where you are. I'm also going to talk about ways to use technology to help with that, but there should never be a time. If you get a phone call from a prospective tenant that said, meet me at a property, you need to tell someone in your office, if your office is set up for that. It could be another property manager, another real estate agent. It could be your spouse or an adult child. Someone needs to know where you are at all times. Not only that, they need to know who you're with. So this is where the ID comes into play. And so often agents, and like I said, I've been an agent over 34, 35 years ago. I was an agent. I know this. I talk to thousands of agents on a regular basis. Agents hesitate to ask for ID for whatever reason. But think about if you go, remember Blockbuster, here I am dating myself. If you wanted to rent a movie, you handed that kid behind the counter your ID without hesitating. So if you're asking a client to see an ID to help them make the largest purchase of their lives, and if they hesitate, that's a red flag like Paula talked about. So definitely keep that in mind. Someone needs to know where you are. We're going to talk about ways to use technology to do that. Now I know that Craigslist frauds are a big deal. I'm going to tell you a way to prevent, you can't prevent them, but I'm going to tell you a way to slow it down and to protect your owners, your property owners. When the pandemic hit last year, all of us had to, I hate the word, everyone hates the word, we had to pivot. We had to learn how to work virtually, right? Criminals were doing the same thing. They had to figure out how do we victimize people from the comforts of our home. They all started, so many of them started scams and frauds based on the pandemic. Some of them started the COVID-19 fraud, and I'll talk to you about that. But Paula touched upon self-showings. Now, self-showings has been a lifesaver in this industry. And I know there are so many companies, including property management and real estate companies that have been doing this all along. I've talked to you all who've utilized self-showings. What you need to think about are the potential dangers and the potentials for your owners to be victimized using self-showings. So bottom line is self-showings is someone who's interested in seeing a property. They get a code from the company. And I know there's, what is that, Show Mojo, Tenant Turner, and I'm sure there are several others. I don't know how each of them works specifically, but you get a code and you use the code to go look at the property on your own, or you give the code to a prospective tenant to look at it on your own. What you have to be aware is that whoever that tenant is, if they're not who they proclaim to be, they could vandalize the house. They could destroy the house. If there's anything inside, they could burglarize the house, and you've given them access. So you need to make sure whichever showing service that you decide to use, that they have a screening and a security policy in place. An even bigger one that got an opportunity to talk to an Inman writer, and she was talking about the different COVID scams and frauds. I said, here's one, and she had never heard of it before, but the identity theft. So we know how Craigslist allows people to hijack a Craigslist listing, how they can hijack any house on the market or for rent and say it is theirs and collect a deposit from unsuspecting victims. So here's where they take it a step further. So they give someone a code and they say, this is my property, here's the code, go look at it. So now the potential tenant is standing inside, excited, it must be legitimate, I'm inside, I'm able to look at it. And then the criminal has said on the counter will be some applications. Fill out the application so that I can run your paperwork, your credit, and see what we need to do. So the unsuspecting tenant now fills out the application with their social security number, their job information, their address, all of that information, and then they either leave it there, and then of course the criminal has a way to get access to the property. They get that, and now not only do they wire funds thinking that they're placing a deposit on the property, which they're not because it's a Craigslist fraud, but now their identity is in danger of being stolen. They have their social security number, they have everything they need. So there are so many dangers involved in self-showings. If there's anyone on here who is from a self-showing company, just type the company name in the chat section, and let us know if you have any security procedures in place to stop any of these types of crimes. So just say the company name, and yes, we have security procedures in place, and then Paula will let me know when we have something there. Another type of fraud that the criminals thought of when this pandemic took place is malware virus fraud. So many of us had to get on our technology, and we weren't all accustomed to doing that. So we didn't know what we were clicking on. We were opening things, clicking on links, and that's where we infected it could be even your Android or your iPhone devices, maybe not so much, but now they have been targets of malware. If you go to, if you want to download an app, instead of going to either the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, if you download an app that someone sends you or that you see on the internet, that's dangerous. You need to make sure you go to the Apple Store or to the Google Play Store, because they have vetted the companies. They can't guarantee that they're not going to be sending out malware, but they have at least done some level of vetting. So don't click on anything. And another thing is the domain names. Criminals immediately started buying up domain names like covid19.com.org, coronavirus, everything related to the virus. They bought up all of those domain names to look legitimate. So if you get an email or a text saying, hey, here's how you can donate to help victims of COVID-19, or here's resources if you're a victim of COVID-19, don't click on anything. Don't click. If you get an email prompting you to do something, and nowadays they're doing it by text message. I don't know if any of you all got an Amazon text message or a PayPal text message saying your password has been compromised. Click here to reset it. Don't do it. Before you take any action, whether clicking or responding to an email, clicking on a link within an email, clicking on a link in a text message, pause. Pause before you act. Think about it. And then when I got the PayPal text message, my immediate thought was, oh no, they've compromised my PayPal account. How tempting was it to click that link? But I didn't. I paused. Then I went out to the PayPal website directly to log in to see if there was an issue, and there was not. Same thing with the Amazon. Do not click anything without pausing. So many, and this is an exciting time for those in the real estate industry, that you're independent contractors and you can get the PPE money, you can get PPP money, and you can, you're eligible for the EIDL loans, everything. Criminals know that. They know you're excited and they want to infringe upon you and to get your information. So if someone's promising you any kind of business loan or information, pause, go to the SBA website or go to the lender's website directly. Do not click on links. It's just that simple. Phishing scams, those are people sending out emails trying to get information from you. So whether they're asking about your business or anything, again, I can't say it enough. Don't respond. Take time, go outside of that email and check it out for yourself. Now, this one was a big deal back in the beginning, and I know that it's probably happening now. They're pretending to be CDC and they're going to the door to warn you. And this is something I tell real estate agents, and it goes for you too, to lead with safety with your clients. So that means your owners, if you get an opportunity to share with them information on a regular basis, why not make it safety information? Why not safety and security tips and information just on a regular basis as you go along? One of them could be warning about all of the COVID-19 and the pandemic scams out there. Just say, this is one that I've heard about. You know, if you get someone knocking at your door, don't open the door, especially if they say they're from the CDC, not likely. Any of these scams and tips that we've talked about is information worth sharing to your clients. Again, here we are with the advanced fee loan. They're taking advantage of people who are excited about the money that the government is offering and support now. Another deal, and this is one that I would more likely be able to fall for, because we've all had to upgrade our technology, and then we've all had to have help with our technology. And so if you got an email saying, hey, I'm from tech support, you might be tempted to click it. Just no, don't do it. Here is a website that lists a lot of the COVID scams that I've talked about, and there are more that I haven't even touched upon. When leading with safety, use the opportunity to share safety tips. Hey, here are some frauds that are going on. Here are some home security things, or here are some tips that you need to know about to keep your property safe. And I'm working for you as well. That lets them know that you don't just contact them when there's something wrong or when you need something, but that you're always thinking about not only them, but their safety, the safety of their property and their tenants. Lead with safety, stay top of mind with safety. We talked about meeting in the office. If you're going to look up some of the articles that I've talked about, this is the website to find the articles. Just go to NAR's website and you search my name. Okay, I don't have to tell you all to dress professionally. All I have to do is tell you to dress safely. That means when you're out working in the field, you're not wearing your fancy, expensive diamonds. This is not the place for your expensive jewelry, those watches. That goes for everyone with these cell phones or what $1,000 devices, but this is your lifeline to safety. As long as you keep it handy, you can have this. But if you have tablets and laptops and you're dealing with ladies' designer purses, they can make you a target because they're very expensive. And I shouldn't even have to say it, but I do. When you're wearing high heel shoes, you need to remember that they're dangerous and they're hard to run in. So you have to keep in mind that you may have to get away in a hurry. And some of the stories that we talked about involved agents who were able to get away because they were comfortable enough and able to do so. You all are in your cars an awful lot. Imagine if your car broke down, there's no cell signal, and you need to walk for help. Hard to do in high heel shoes. I was in Nashville, taught a class about this. We got to this part and I had an agent in the audience take off her shoe, her stiletto. She said, "This is my weapon." And she was prepared to use it. Even ran into an agent in Kansas who said that she had inflicted damage on someone who needed stitches after she defended herself with a heel. For the most part, high heel shoes are not recommended when you're working. There are 7 names on the screen in front of you. Can anyone tell me what you notice about these names? Anyone see a trend in the names? Let me know, Paula, if you see any answers.
Okay.
What do you notice about these names?
Somebody said all men, males.
Bingo, all men. Every single name on there is a real estate agent or a property manager who met with a sad ending because they were victimized. David Abbasi, and a real estate agent in Atlanta, Georgia, who was murdered during Safety Month of 2016. Ryan Vega, an agent in Las Vegas, who was stabbed in the neck, who survived. Sidney Cranston Jr.'s body was found 18 months after he met a client that he didn't know at a property. Lane Gamble in North Carolina had a gun put to his head as he sat in the car in front of the property. An agent in Washington was brutally assaulted. He survived. That was in June of 2018. Frank Wayman in Missouri, a broker, manager, owner in an office, let someone in to either use the bathroom or get water or something. And he had a machete put to his neck. David Stocco is the property manager who was killed in January of 2019. I wrote an article for Realtor magazine that talked about 4 ways that male agents put themselves in danger. This was the most read article of the year, the most popular article of the year. And it's something that I would advise you to share with other agents in your office, especially if you know guys who think, "Oh, that's not for me. Safety doesn't involve me. I'll accompany some of the ladies, but that's not me." It's everyone. And as you all saw, the 2 most recent crimes against agents / property managers were men. So it's everyone. Everyone needs to be aware. So how do you keep your office from being targeted? You need to have a no cash policy, and it needs to be a strong no cash policy. It needs to be told to your tenants everywhere, every opportunity, on the door. It needs to be on the statement. We have no cash in the office, and it needs to be in every mailing that you send out, every letter, every notice. Everything must always say there's no cash in the office. That way, that takes that temptation off the plate of any maybe would-be criminals. And I assume that everyone here does virtual collection of rent. So is there anyone here who does not collect rent in a virtual manner? In the chat boxes, let us know how you do it. So if you don't collect rent virtually, are you having your tenant mail it in? Are you picking it up in person? Or what is the non-virtual way you are collecting rent? And Paula, are there any other questions? I thought I saw a comment in the chat. Anything else there while we wait for people to tell us who are not actually virtually collecting rent?
And so one of the ways, and what you see, I think, is Teresa posting your information on how people can find your articles at NAR. But there are sources through the softwares that we have available to us as property managers, like Rent Manager, Appfolio, those kinds of things that have cash options. And those cash locations are actually like places like Walmart or certain places that are set up around that are probably have the security and stuff to do that kind of stuff, but people can bring in cash there, pay their convenience fee, and then those cash opportunities just go straight to the portals. So that is a much safer way for not handling cash and not dealing with it. But I don't see anybody else who's talking about that. We also don't take money orders because money orders are not really good funds anymore. They can be canceled up to, I think it's 90 days, maybe it's 60, but I think it's 90 days. Of course, there's tons of frauds even with cashier's checks, but we do still take cashier's checks as at the very beginning. But also, I think there's probably going to be a rise of fraud for things like Venmo and things that aren't secure yet. But that is definitely something that we're working to electronically, is trying to find ways that are secure.
Paula, what would you say is the number one and two methods of collecting collecting rent on a virtual basis? What are the companies that do that? Or if anyone has them, they can put that in the chat as well.
Great. Tisha added they accept Zelle. Zelle does have a little bit of security based on the bank. So Bank of America uses Zelle. I think Chase does. Several other places use Zelle. Venmo is so popular. It is a PayPal underling or sister company or whatever. And I think it's because it's so user friendly that a lot of people use it. It is not insured though. So you have to be careful with big money like security deposits and things like that.
Excellent point. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, wonderful. And if anyone else uses any kind of virtual method to collect rent that you've had good experience with, please put that in the chat so that everyone else knows those resources. So let's talk about ways to make sure that you are safe and that you are safe from your tenants. I got an opportunity to interview Anthony Burnside for the article as well. And when you read the article in Houston Realtor magazine, you will hear what he had to say. And Anthony he's actually worked as a bodyguard. And he's decided he wants to get into the real estate safety protection business. So he was happy to be a resource. He is saying that you need to conduct a threat assessment. So if there's a tenant who may have behavior that's going to be risky, you need to know that up front. So that means simply paying attention. If you have someone that you're going to be evicting, and we know there are going to be a lot of evictions coming soon, you need to start paying attention. And one of the things that he says is that you need to learn from different sources. That means knowing the neighbors. That means knowing who lives in the neighborhood, who's next door to any property that you manage, so that they feel comfortable coming to you, sharing information. And then that way you know what's going on. And if you have an open line of communication with your tenants, you'll know if there are issues that may present an issue down the line. One thing that you'll notice whenever there's a crime, and unfortunately there have been too many, even just recently, 2 of these mass shootings in a week or so, whenever there's a crime, the first thing you see would be the news people interviewing neighbors and friends and coworkers, and they always said, I had no idea. Everything was so fine. They were so calm, nothing. Wait a day or two, then all of a sudden the interviews are, well, I did notice something different. He did just lose his job, or she just went through a divorce or whatever. There's always a sign in advance. And I know some of you have several properties and you can't always get to know your neighbors or get to know the tenants on an intimate basis, but establish relationships where someone will tell you if something's wrong. Make yourself a friend to the neighbors and let them know. No one who lives in a neighborhood who purchased their homes, no one really wants renters around because they think renters aren't going to take care and that the neighborhood will go down. If you establish yourself right up front as a friend to the homeowner, that they're going to remember that. One thing I did when I moved into my house is I sent a postcard out to my neighbors around me, in front of me and behind me, saying, hi, I'm Tracy. I have 3 dogs. If they are barking, send me call me or leave me a message. If you see my garage door open or anything, let me know and I will do the same for you. So that's something to think about incorporating in your marketing when you get a new property, is to make friends with the neighbors. And think about it, if they ever need to rent and they leave, they know you and they see how you manage property. So that could be a business development tool. But bottom line is get to know the neighbors and make sure they know that you will be there to help them make sure the neighborhood stays safe. If you see something, say something. Make that your mantra. So that way you have ears to the ground and you know what's going to happen before anything happens. One thing that Anthony says is to learn if they may be suffering from bullying or any of these circumstances where there may be an issue. And if so, you are on alert that there could be dangerous behavior. So you're paying closer attention. He talks about working with the police as well as security, knowing when to call the police. And his bottom line is police can only respond to criminal calls. They can't do anything about civil calls. And I know you've probably had circumstances where you've called and they say, we can't help you, take them to court. One thing that he does advise is if you utilize security, your security needs to be trained on how fair housing laws. If they're not, it could get you in trouble. He told a story about tenants who were disruptive. They had a fight or something, and the security patrol didn't know who lived in the house, and they ended up physically accosting one of the people fighting, thinking that it was guests or someone visiting, and he evicted them. He physically said, "You've got to go." You know, he evicted them from the premises that night. He got in trouble because it was an actual tenant. He didn't know it. He didn't know fair housing law. So if you hire a security company, make sure they're well versed on fair housing laws, and that means treating everyone the same, and that means having a general idea of who lives in each property. So that's homework that you're going to have to do. Let's talk a little bit about safe work practices. As you all know, there's an eviction moratorium going on. And as you all know, it's got to end one day. Right now it's scheduled to end on the 31st of March, but we know it's been extended time and time again. It may be extended again, but at some point that eviction moratorium is going to end. So you need to be prepared to do a safe eviction without jeopardizing your safety, as well as not jeopardizing your staff's safety and other people in the neighborhood. So do an occupancy check in advance. In other words, know who lives in the property, who's supposed to be there, and not only that, but who's typically there. So if someone's on the lease and then they all of a sudden they have people coming and going and you don't realize that there's a house full of people, you need to know that before it's time to do an eviction. You need to post a notice for the eviction. You all know this. One thing that Anthony says is if you think it may be contentious, let law enforcement or a professional process server post the notice so that you're not out there posting the notice and putting yourselves in danger. Like the two property managers that we saw in the stories and the examples earlier, they were out there dealing with issues on the property, and the people there, the tenants, were not happy. So make sure you allow for someone professional who may be armed if necessary to post the notice. Have a team. And this one I got from Kelly Tolson, who is in the NARPM office. She is in the headquarters in your main office, and she was president, I think, on the national level last year. She said, assemble a team. So you need to have your team members, not one person going to evict. You need to have a whole team. You need to have a moving company, a trash out company, have law enforcement, have your locksmith ready to help evict right then and there. In other words, don't go alone. And along the lines of the locksmith, I have to talk to another member who said that he is advising all of his clients to go to keyless locks because those are quicker and easier. He said he's met with some resistance when they find out the upfront cost, but that's a one-time fee right up front to get the lock installed. And then that way, when it's time to lock a tenant out after eviction, it's as simple as pushing a code. And if someone gets locked out, who wants to get up? My brother-in-law has to get up in the middle of the night sometimes to take a key to a tenant. This way, if you have the right kind of system, you can do it remotely on your phone and just simply reset the key and let them in their house. So definitely consider keyless locks. Call law enforcement officials to be there with you when you are evicting. If the law enforcement won't come, then call a trained security person to come. So that way your team is not in danger when it is time to evict.
Tracy.
Yes.
We have a tip in the chat that Tisha has added that they leave their business cards as a property management company or property managers with a note for the next door neighbors as they have tenant change outs. So people around the property would know what's coming and going and kind of what to expect, like a move-in date. So that's a really good tip.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Excellent tip. Okay. Any other comments or anything in the chat section?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay. Hey, I need a real quick pause. I need a 1 minute pause. So if anyone has to return a phone call or anything, take a pause, but give me 1 minute, please. Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay. There we are. And I'm trying to.
So while Tracy's taking a minute break, if you guys need to take a break, go ahead. But just to fill in for just a minute about the teams that she was talking about, that's one of the greatest things I think about NARPM as well. One of the major benefits, as we have experienced property managers who've been in the business here in the Houston area for decades, literally decades. They offer their expertise. We have mentorship opportunities as new members to NARPM. We have education at the national level that we offer, as well as partnering with AJR and what they bring to the table. So that is part of your team from a really high level. We also have affiliates that belong to our association, like locksmiths and attorneys and trash out companies and handyman and, you know, those are part of your team.
Okay, well, thank you. Technology, my battery was about to die on my camera, and it's like I can't have the screen go black. Okay, so here we are. I have about 10 or so more minutes here. So let me get through these slides, and at the end, Paula and J-Mac or Paula is going to wrap it up for us. So let me get through these slides. And if there are any other questions, type it in. So getting to know I've talked about this already, getting to know who lives where they're supposed to, who lives there, who's supposed to be there, who's not there. Of course, it's an extra duty, but it's something that's very important when it's time to evict. We talked about having the law enforcement team. We talked about that. These are things that Paula mentioned, visiting during daylight hours, but sometimes that's not possible. So if you simply must show after dark, there truly is safety in numbers. And I'm going to talk about a way to use technology to accompany you when it's time to show, if you have to show alone. But typically there is a new agent or a new someone who will accompany you. So there's almost no excuse to do this on your own by yourself. Paula mentioned letting the client lead first. That ensures that nothing blocks your escape route. Nothing should come between you and the door you need to leave in case things go bad. Okay, and robbery, and we talked about the jewelry and the units. So let's talk a little bit about securing the property once you've evicted a client. You need to disable the garage door, and this is what I heard from a property manager. A lot of times houses have the smart garage doors and the smart house features, and you don't think about the garage door. Disengage it, especially if they say we lost the garage door opener. This way, you make sure that they're not able to come back in after they've been evicted. You need to make sure the windows are secured. If a window is left unlocked, a criminal can easily go in the unlocked window. However, if it's locked, they're less likely to want to break that glass because the glass makes noise. Criminals are cowards. They don't want attention. So make sure, as simple as it is, to walk through and lock the doors. We talked about the keyless locks, and security lighting is a big deal. If you drive past a property in the middle of the day and the porch light is on, what does that tell you? So people think I did my job. You know, you're supposed to leave your porch light on. I left my porch light on, but I don't feel like turning it off and on, so I'll just leave it on. What does a porch light on in the middle of the day say? Anyone? Says that no one's home. They may be on vacation. So it could have the opposite effect. So here's another area where you're having a conversation with your tenants. You're talking to your tenants about ways to keep the house safe. You're talking to your owners about ways to keep the house safe. Here's where you tell the owners that it's worth it to buy a simple adapter, a dust-to-dawn adapter, screw it into the light fixtures, put the light bulb in. When it's dark, the lights automatically come on. When it's light, the lights automatically go off. So they have an opportunity to make sure the house is lit at night, which discourages burglaries, and it automatically goes off. They don't have to do anything. It could be a motion light, it could be a sensor, whatever it takes to make sure there's lighting at night. That's a conversation to have with your sellers. Also, I don't know if you all are familiar with CPTED. I assume that that's a basic in the industry. It's crime prevention through environmental design. I had an opportunity to talk to one of the founders of CPTED to talk about ways to utilize CPTED principles in your properties. And if we have time, we can briefly touch upon those. Right now, let's talk about technology. All of us have had to become technology experts in order to stay social and in order to survive, to stay in business. So what you need to do is, if you're going to use a safety app, there are certain things that you must have. Someone mentioned Life 360, that is considered a safety app. And there's so many of them on the market. My goal is to make sure you use one that actually has features that you're going to need to save you. One is it must have live support. Someone needs to be on the phone. If you are ever in a distress situation and you need help, there needs to be someone on the phone who will answer the call when you say that you're in a dangerous situation. You need to make sure they're a technology company. They've been around a while. It scares me how many companies pop up and they say, we're a safety company, we're a safety app company. They're not typically there in a year or two. And then it has to have a GPS feature. It has to have a location feature. When you're in trouble, they need to be able to get help to you in a hurry. So many of you all have had to learn to work in a virtual manner. You need to be careful when you're out working virtually, whether it's taping videos, having pictures made of the property so that you can advertise and promote them. You need to be careful if the house is furnished and there are valuables in the background. That means if there's artwork in the media room, if there's expensive electronics, if there is a gun collection, anything of value should not be visible in the pictures when you're doing your virtual tours or virtual showings so that you don't make the house a target. So many of you all who are social media butterflies, you know that when you increase the algorithm of getting your posts shown, if you are live. So many of you all are going live on property saying, this is what I'm doing, or here's our newest property, whatever it is, you need to be careful because when you're telling people where you are, you're also saying where you are not. So they can target you, and stalking is a big deal in this industry, but also they know where you live and they know you're not home and you're thinking, no one knows where I live. Trust me, they know, and I will tell you briefly in a minute. Again, on social media, and I'm going to try to get through as many slides as I can. I have a few more minutes here. And then again, this is being recorded, so you can always go back and look. If I am going through fast or something, you can go back and look at the slide. But social media is filled with social engineers. Those are people who are trying to trick you out of information that you normally wouldn't give so that they can log into your account, basically steal your identity. On Facebook, if you remember last year, they were saying, show us pictures of you graduating your, to show, to show the students who can't graduate. Now, let's just show them we're here for them. So you're posting pictures of your graduation and telling, I graduated from whatever high school in this year. Then you saw posts like, show us your first car. So all of a sudden, everyone's digging out those pictures, and it's fun and it's innocent, but criminals are looking for that information. If you think about when you lose a password on a bank account or any kind of social media account, one of the first questions is, where did you go to high school? What was your first car? They're getting the information from you so that they can steal your identity. So definitely pay attention when you're online, how that information could be used. Cyber insurance, it's a thing. If most of you all have stopped going into the office and you're working from home, or maybe you've always worked remotely, especially if you work for a company, you need to be careful. Companies, corporations have IT security protocols in place. So when you're in the office working, those computers have firewalls and everything to keep that information secure. When we grab our laptops and we go home and start working, our home computers don't have those same security protocols. So if you're entering and receiving client information on your home computer, or you're sharing the computer with your teenager or someone who's surfing the web and we don't know which websites they're going, or we don't know if they may accidentally click on your information, you need to be careful because you're increasing the liability for your company. So you need to make sure that if you're going to be using your own laptop, that your company has talked to you about security protocols, and that's a whole training. I do a technology training, a technology boot camp, and we talk about the security protocols, but you need to make sure that those are in place before you start working from home. We talked about ways to wire fraud, but basically it's a wire fraud when it comes to deposits impact you in your industry. And the simple way to solve those issues is to always say, never wire money. Don't wire money unless you specifically hear the words out of my mouth. I've seen where some agents, property managers have in their signature, never wire money unless I tell you, or don't accept any request for money wiring without touching base with me. Personally, here's my phone number, or another representative. There was a client who lost money and they sued the agent, they sued the seller of the home. So to decrease liability, make sure you say it out loud, have it on paperwork, never wire funds, don't wire deposit, because that's not how we would do it, or here's who you wire to. And then if you are afraid that there may be something that slips through the cracks, that's where cyber insurance comes into play. The company that the person sued for $150,000, they didn't have 150,000 at the bank. So in that case, that's where cyber insurance is going to be a big deal. If you think about someone as sharp as Barbara Corcoran losing money to wire fraud, then you know that it can happen to anyone. So make sure that you have protocols in place. If you have someone in your office, make sure they know the rules and that people are paying close attention. This is where the word is off in the email address, and you have to be extremely aware. Help desk fraud, go to bostonglobe.com, find the article that I wrote about different real estate frauds. And again, that's something that you can share with your client. Again, keeping safety in the forefront. Here's an article I thought I'd share with you. Make sure we're keeping you safe. All crime, all cybercrime is a result of human behavior. You have to act in order for a crime to occur. You have to push a button, answer an email, click on a link, or else if you don't do any of those things, you will never be the victim of a cyber crime. So you control that. Emails, and I know we're getting close to the end here, so let me just kind of go through and get the most important things. If you have a Gmail or a Yahoo account or a Hotmail account, those are easy to use. They're great. They're also easy to hack. Criminals love it when they see your name followed by a Yahoo or a Gmail account. That's why it's important to have your company's email address. So it should be Tracy at Hawkins Property Management Company. Criminals see that there's a company domain. They're not likely to touch it, but those free accounts are too easy to hack. We don't have time to talk about Zoom data breaches, but what we will do, look at that last box. It says, have I been pwned? Should have a .com, and pwned is spelled right. Have I been pwned.com? You need to take your email address that you use, enter it into that website. It will give you a list of all websites that have been breached with your password. You have to go in and change the password. Have I been pwned.com? When we're done today, enter every email address that you use, and it will give you a list of sites. I've had Canva, Poshmark that says these sites have been breached. Tracy, you need to go in and change your password. So do that today. That's homework. And then digital assistants, if you use any of those Alexa or Nest, you need to make sure that they're not in the office or the workspace, because if you say someone's name, it could accidentally dial them. And then you could be talking about proprietary information. So the easiest thing to do is to unplug those devices when you are actually using them, when you have them in your office. We don't need to talk about COVID or coronavirus. You all have your safety tips in hand. The home seller checklist, that is something that you can collect, that you can use when you're touring a property, trying to get to be the property manager of record. Then you get to show them that you're a little bit different. You're going to talk to them about security procedures in an empty house. That's different. This is a topic that we talk about more in my upcoming class, the real estate agent safety class. It's for sellers, but it also goes for property managers. You're letting them know that you're concerned about the locks, the landscaping, the lighting. You're talking to them about keeping their house safe while it's under your management care. So again, you're not just the agent coming to talk about money, you're actually leading with safety. You can find the article and the checklist on that NAR website. And I'm looking at the clock, and I know I need to wind this up really quickly. Just be very careful of the pictures that you use. All pictures should be professional pictures, because again, criminals are looking for an easy target. Male agents use the suggestive pictures too. So you need to keep it professional. And this is a website of real estate agents in Vegas. It says call our angels for any of our, call our hotline for any of our angels. Imagine the phone call. So don't make yourself a target. And I had an expert say that the picture on the left is a professional picture. The one on the right is more personal, and it's more of a connection to someone who may be targeting agents. So it's even in the smile, in the look that you have. It must be a professional headshot, straight ahead, nothing extra. Let us wrap up. Fair housing. I know you all are familiar with fair housing. We talked a little bit about social media, and I'm just trying to find the last thing I wanted to cover really quickly, Paula. Here it would be when we talked about knowing that there is not a such thing as privacy. So when you're telling where you are, people can go to any of these websites and find out where you aren't. They can find out where you live. There's so much information out there that it would scare you to death. Personal information, who lives in your house, where you live, how many bedrooms in your house. This information is out there. So you need to protect your information. Google yourself on a regular basis, set up a Google alert with your name so that you know what's out there about you, so that you can react and respond accordingly. Use technology to screen your clients. The same technology that you use to check them out, know that they could be checking you out as well. here's the safety app that fits all the criteria that I actually like. And if you all have any others, put it in the chat, although I'm about done here. But make sure you know that there are apps out there. If you push a button, all of a sudden there's going to be a live person who pops up. You're waving at them, they're looking at you, and you can let them know, hey, this is my client I'm showing. Hey, this is my safety partner. That immediately lets that client know that someone's with you. You are not alone. So if you can't get someone to go with you, you can always have someone virtually or technologically there with you. Assume that there is a camera everywhere you go. When you're looking at properties or hosting a property, use signs to say that there's a camera, whether or not there isn't one. So you should have a stash of these in your car whenever you take a listing. If the house is empty or not, just put these cameras in, whether or not there is a camera. This is using your phone. If you ever lose your phone, if you have Google Maps, you can find a location, a map out location, every single word that your phone has been with you. And also that works for you. If you're ever lost, someone can log into Google Maps for free, find out exactly where you are. You can send a message with your location out to them if you're in trouble. And then finally, let me breathe. Finally, last thing is what's on the market to keep you safe. When the National Association of Realtors surveyed real estate agents, the #1 non-lethal safety tool has always been pepper spray. You need to make sure you know what you're carrying, the type of pepper spray that's out there, how it works, and just basically bottom line, know what you're carrying. And if you ever have questions about pepper spray, I am a resource for that as well. And that's something I'm going to get back into more and more, because more and more people keep asking me, Tracy, where do we go to get pepper spray, and what's the right spray? How do you use it? I am a resource for that. This talks about SEPTED, using your environment to help control crime, from landscaping to lighting to locks. The whole deal. Okay, so that's pretty much all that I have. I'm going to just click through these slides here so that you have this information for when you have time to sit back and look at it. Probably one of the most important things is to go to NAR website. I did a whole series on our distressed properties. It's a whole different ball game. So definitely take a peek at that. Let me know if you have questions about any of the items, anything I talked about today. Any questions, Paula? I'm done. Any questions or any comments?
So a lot of information, as you can tell. The reason why this was an hour and a half is because she was trying to give us some meat. Sometimes there's so much meat, you have to kind of take a breath. So giving us the opportunity to go get this information is helpful. But I also want to remind everybody that's on the Zoom meeting or the webinar today that we have additional courses and webinars coming up. Boot camps and manager and owner office things. Some of this stuff she'll be able to get to in greater detail. We did have a couple of really good comments, Tracy, that I wanted to kind of go back and look at. But one person, I'm going to find it here in a second. The last thing that was said is she buys her pepper spray at Academy. If you will have a comment about that. We also have someone who said, what is a good light adapter? And I'm guessing on her phone, I'm not really sure what she means, but that's what I was guessing. And then I thought Tisha had a really good comment. They don't issue garage door opener or remotes. That's not a requirement by the Texas Property Code to have garage door remotes changed, because we have that door between the house and the garage that's required to have that third lock. But she said tenants must get a universal remote, which forces them to change the code. I thought that was really good.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so I think what she's asking about the light adapter is the light adapter that you screw into your porch light, and then you put the bulb inside, and that automatically turns lights off and on. I went to the hardware store, and there are a number of choices, and it's the easiest thing you can do. You don't have to worry about an electrician. Screw it in, screw the bulb in, and there's a sensor on there. And as long as it's facing the sunlight, it will turn your lights off and on automatically. I have it here in my house. The other one was about pepper spray at Academy, and that's excellent. All I'm advising you to do is to make sure it's the right formula. Police officers and postal carriers carry pure pepper spray, OC. So as long as the label says OC, then you're carrying what they carry. It works on people and it works on dogs. Keep in mind, nothing's 100%, but this is the most effective formula. It causes the eyes to burn in water, and they close anywhere from 30 minutes or so. It causes the mucous membranes to swell, so the person is coughing. So that buys you time out of the situation. So first thing is to make sure it's the right formula. If it's CS or CN, that's tear gas. and it's a pain inducer. So if you spray someone who's under the influence or out of it, they're not really going to feel it. It may even escalate the attack. So look for OC, and then you must test your pepper spray. Take it outside, hold it down low, and give it a quick spray. That way you make sure it's in working order and you're familiar with the spray pattern before you need it. You don't want to wait until you're in a situation and you're trying to figure out how it works. So excellent that you have it. Check the expiration date. Every pepper spray canister has an expiration date on it somewhere. It's usually good for anywhere from 2 to 3 years. So excellent question. Comment.
Awesome. So that's all we have in the chat. If someone has a last minute thing they need to point out, please add it really quick. So in closing, I want to say thank you, Tracy, and everyone who's participated with questions and input. And again, this is just the beginning. HAR and your risk management committee has put together additional classes for the series. So in June, on June 23rd, there's the broker manager and owner office safety workshop. It's 2 hours of CE credit as well. If you're not a broker manager, owner, whatever, please let your office know. Look it up, send them the information. I think it's very good to sometimes communicate up. Maybe they're busy doing something else and they had no clue. Also in September, the 21st and 22nd, we have an agent boot camp, real estate safety practices and technology boot camp. Each of those days both come with 3 hours of CE credit. And you can sign up for safety classes at har.com/safety. Teresa might be putting that in the chat for us. Also, in addition, HAR is partnering with NARPM. There are 3 additional webinars that HAR will put on June 17th, August 19th, and October 21st. And you can sign up and find more details about each one of those webinars at har.com/education, and then look for the webinar tab. Bottom line is HAR is doing everything that they can to help us be better at what we do and stay aware of our surroundings. So if I had one takeaway today, it was a lot of meat and a lot of opportunity to change the habits that we have to make what we do better from a safe perspective. Thanks everyone for your time and great information.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Don't forget, lead with safety. Always talk safety with your clients and your tenants, and they know that you're safety aware. Lead with safety.
Excellent. We appreciate you, Tracy. Have a great
Thank you
day.
all. Everybody be safe.